Urban explorers. What's your scariest experience? There was an old feed mill near my house when I was a kid. It was an 11-story tall concrete tower on a large plot of paved land with a rusted fence around it. Looked like a castle. Everyone's parents told them to never go there, which to kids is, of course, a challenge. In the beginning, I jumped the fence a few times and then couldn't resist trying to get into the actual building. The lock was massive, but old, and eventually I managed to get it off. The inside was pitch black, so I got a few friends to go back with me. All of us had flashlights. We went up the stairs. What we thought would be cool would be to get onto the roof and maybe put up a flag or something. As we climbed the dark stairs, we noticed a certain humming noise. It grew louder as we went up, and then the first of us got stung, and we realized the horrible mistake we had made and ran like mad from the now very angry swarm of hornets that had built a nest a good 10 feet long in this abandoned concrete building. We were all stung a few dozen times, and it was really painful. My father just laughed and said, "I'd better listen next time." About 8 years ago, me, my ex, and his neighbor were exploring the Packard plant in Detroit. We started going in tunnels underneath, where we were walking on large pipes because the water down there was about 6 inches deep. We probably got half a mile in and found a woman's body in the water. That was the first time I had seen a decomposing body. She was bloated, but her hair was still perfectly intact in her braids. Went into an old abandoned pub in my town. Graffiti and shit everywhere. Had to sneak in by climbing onto the second floor and going in through the window. I was with a few mates and we went downstairs, which was completely ruined, into the basement, which was a little stairway that led into a very, very dark room, which was decently wide. Couldn't see anything. And then all we heard was a little screech and loud footsteps running towards us. Don't really need to say that we booked it and never looked back. Not scary spooky, but scary for his life. My roommate and I did a lot of urbex a few years ago. One time, he and one of his buddies were exploring an abandoned beer factory in winter, and on one of the parts of the roof, it was missing, so there was ice on the floor. He didn't see that, and he slipped and fell. The impact broke the floor and made him go right through. He fell 2 stories down, he broke one leg and lots of ribs. Now, since he was technically trespassing, he was too afraid to call an ambulance, so he got his mate to carry him out to the car and drive him to the hospital, which made his injuries even worse. Luckily, he made a full recovery, but he spent the next 2 weeks after that very loudly moaning in pain day and night. We both pretty much swore off urbex after that. Broken ribs, and he had someone carry him. I pulled muscles on my rib cage and I couldn't get off of the floor, let alone someone jostling me into their arms. Me and a few friends slipped through a hole in the fence of the haunted house that every little town has. Legend went that the big mining boss lived there, went crazy, and killed his family. I researched it, but I came up with nothing. Just after midnight, we creep in. Go around to the back to find it's not one house, but kind of like a little courtyard with smaller buildings surrounding it. Looked through a broken window and it looked like someone had started renovations not long ago. Plaster kit on the floor, white paint on walls, and a fluorescent light installed. The rest of the place was old. Maybe 1930s, rotted brick, flaking paint, and boarded up on windows for context. We saw another broken window across the yard and shined a light at it to see a huge scorch/burn marks across the outside wall. We walked to the broken window, and it's the complete opposite of the first room. Smashed windows, shadows across the walls, ceilings, and strange lumpy shapes on the floor, as if the place was ransacked. We shone a light in briefly, and the light holder pulled away instantly and said, I'm leaving. We all saw the burnt room, splattered with what looked like dried blood everywhere. Upturned old furniture with the words, "They didn't catch me," or something similarly foreboding, scratched across the wall. We decided to leave and just chilled out in an abandoned train yard and drank until we got too cold and went home. I used to live on the same street as 2 of my cousins. There was a church right down the road, and it had always been quite creepy even though it was still in use. One day, me and my cousins discovered that there was a little apartment underneath the church stairs. We peeked through the window, and there was a Christmas tree and presents in the living room. Everything was dusty. It was weird because it was May at the time, nowhere near Christmas. We asked a little old lady who lived next door, and she said that it was abandoned. The door was painted green and rotting, and we crept inside the house and wandered about a bit. There was broken glass everywhere. It looked like a tornado had swooshed in moments before our arrival, but everything was coated in dust. We peered into a bedroom, and there was a dead pig lying on the bed. We thought it was a toy or something, but it stank, and it was fleshy when we poked it with a stick. We heard footsteps coming toward the room, and a female voice saying, "Piggy, piggy, piggy, piggy." We legged it after that. We never saw who said it, but no way am I going back there anytime soon. Found an old bunker from World War II, ruined and dirty both from outside and inside. We, me and two other friends, explored it whole except one huge steel door. There was a deadly stench coming from the other side. On that door, it said in white paint, "Here lie the traitors to the motherland. May they never find peace, for a betrayer is doomed never to rest. Do not open this door." Since the door was fused shut, we had no means of opening. So we called on local authorities to report finding a World War II bunker. Routine procedure in Eastern Europe due to danger being present from potential mines. Officers took our report, ensured that we didn't take anything. We had found a couple of shell casings and some old grenades in a box, and they dropped us home. 3 days after, local news reported finding a mass grave, CCA 150 corpses, all stuffed in a medium-sized room, some half-decayed, some still in uniforms, some naked, some burnt, and some with sliced throats. We knew they killed someone and fused them in there, but to find that amount of corpses with only a steel door separating 3 young boys and a 60-plus-year-old mass grave, that thought still gives me chills, even 10 years later. A friend and I were visiting an old, crumbly hospital in the area. The campus is fairly large, and we started in one of the older buildings. I prefer to start at the top floor and work my way down, so that's precisely what we did. The top floor is a little worse for wear. There are prominent holes in the ceiling and floors. In the main hallway, I was stepping around a rather large hole and touched the wall on my right for balance. Despite how lightly I touched the wall, it came crashing down on top of me, as well as a large portion of the ceiling. I stepped forward as quickly as I could, but my foot got caught in the floor and sunk through. My friend helped dislodge me, and I'm lucky I left with just a few scrapes and bruises. Word of advice: never go exploring alone. In high school, me and some friends liked to go to the old abandoned Air Force plant in the middle of the night. To get there, you had to run across this field, about half a mile, until you reached a fence that surrounded the plant where there was a hole to get inside. I think it was my 4th time or so that me and about 7 friends were heading over there when we came face to face with 3 cows. We had no idea that there were cows in that field this whole time. One of the cows looked as if it was about to charge us, but it only lunged a bit. It was still enough to make me want to shit myself. Cows are scary as hell if you've never been face to face with one like that before. This past weekend, I went on a hike with a few girls, just friends. We passed by an abandoned cabin, but it was pretty hard to get to, and it would have gotten us off of our route, so we ignored it. About 5 minutes later, we passed by another abandoned building, which is an exact replica of the other one. I didn't want to go to it, but a girl decided to just enter, and I couldn't leave her alone, so I followed along. On the ceiling, we saw some weird witchcraft typography. After really inspecting the area, there was ashes of things that got burnt, some stains of blood maybe. We weren't convinced that they were blood stains. As any regular person would do, we took some photos and left, but it really creeped me out. I should mention that this is in Mexico, and that area is known to have witches, hence why we think that there are witchcraft typographies. As any regular person would do, we took some photos. No, sorry, regular people don't take pictures of bloody crime scenes. Those are the acts of a budding serial killer. I'm just yanking your chain. I went into an abandoned auditorium with video camera. Decided to set it up in the seats so I could take a video of myself moonwalking on the stage. Also used my phone to record the ambient sounds of the building. When I got home, I realized I could hear someone talking in the phone recording. It scared the shit out of me because I thought I was completely alone the entire time. I went to a closed up mental hospital in my city with some friends at night. Everything was cool until we got to the basement, where there were 5-meter wide and 4-meter high lit tunnels going far in both directions. We headed down one end and found a huge active generator. Then we went the other way, and as we were about to hit another intersection, we saw two men wearing full green attire and face masks walking at the end of one of the corridors at 2 a.m. We got out of there real quick. I was exploring a certain abandoned mill near a large city on the coast with a friend. We snuck in, messed around a bit, and realized that we only had one flashlight. Took turns, weird noises, and dark inside because there's no power. Evidence of homeless occupation and empty needles, real horror game material. We come up a stairway and turn a corner. Ahead is a walkway bridge, aka the way to the rest of the building. To the right is a pitch black room that doesn't feel very nice. As we walk towards the bridge, the flashlight picks up a sign that says "To Hell" and points toward this dark room. We did not go in. It did not feel right. My friends and I used to explore this old factory/processing plant. No idea what it was originally. Anyway, it had lots of underground sections which were pitch black, even a couple meters from the entrance, but which also required going down a flight of stairs. One time, we found a burned out car 2 to 3 levels down. No idea how it got in there, but that was kind of creepy. Another time, we found a hole. We didn't bring torches, flashlights, with us because we're idiots, but we had lighters, and we're trying to figure out what the hole was or if it could lead anywhere. We put a stick in there and it ended up being at least 6 feet deep, but we also learned that it was full of some liquid and if we had fallen in, could have easily drowned in the dark. Another time we went down a couple levels and one of us at the bottom started screaming, shrieks of absolute terror, and the rest of us thought we were all going to be murdered. We all started running. Everyone was screaming at this point. There was this sludgy shit on the ground and some of us slipped and fell, just like in a goddamn horror movie, sliding and sliding, our limbs out of control. Again, there's 6+ people screaming bloody murder with absolute fear and terror on their faces, so we all thought we were gonna get murdered. Turned out a bird had made a nest down there and my sister got spooked and my friend screamed like a bitch. Exploring an abandoned construction site. It's a site out in redneck country that's got a bunch of old construction vehicles getting overgrown with plants, and my girlfriend and I decided to check it out and see what it's all about. We looked around and don't see a whole lot. It's about to rain, so we decide to head out. And as we are getting in my car, my girlfriend freezes and says, "There's a guy in the woods watching us." I shit myself and ask if she's sure. She repeats herself and says he saw her see him and laid flat on the ground to hide himself. Noped out of there real quick. I was at a Libin quarry earlier on in the year. I heard laughing in the distance, so I turned around to see a fox just sitting there, staring at me. Heard laughing in the other direction, so turned around. Nothing. Looked back at the fox to find it was gone. Noped the fuck right out of there.